Welcome back. Tony Gurley with RadicalTruth.net, and he's about to basically give us a quick rundown of your presentation that you gave today. Lights out when Islam rules America, and I think that's what every American that's watching the news, and you're starting to see the Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib playing the victim cards, right? Hey, we're Muslims, we're victims, and you guys are oppressors. You guys are the racists. And I read a great Wall Street Journal. No, was it the Wall Street Journal? Yeah. Why Ilhan Omar can't, or can't she overcome her prejudice? And there was a young gal who, just like her, was raised in Somalia, and they're raised to hate the Jews essentially. And but I mean, it's they turn themselves into victims, and Islam has done a very good job over here in America in treating themselves as victims. We got to be careful, because that we could let the what into the hen house? What is it? The
Fox.
I'm horrible with sayings, Tony. That's what you'll learn, Tony Gurley here. Yeah, the fox in the hen house. But I'll just open up the floor, man.
So this little slide here that people can see. These are terms that you hear Islamists use. And the reason why one of the reasons why they've gotten so far in America is because they use the same terms that we do, but they define them differently. And if you don't know how these terms are defined according to Islam, you don't know what they mean by that. That's a very important question to ask when someone says something, so you're not continually talking past one another, thinking that you understand what they mean. Like, people have asked me, is Islam a religion of peace? Well, I asked them, what do you mean by peace? Now, depending on what they mean, they'll say, yes, it is, or no, it isn't. So, as you can see here, these are...
peace as in someone could live next to a Muslim without being
here's
Muslim.
Here's the thing.
All right.
You'll see right here. Okay. So, peace, justice, freedom, and human rights. We're going to go through these here. So, what do you think of here in the West when you hear the term peace?
I think of a tranquil... community. There's not necessarily very much I didn't even look at you. I did not even look at your slides.
So, state of tranquility. Okay, what does an Islamist mean by peace? Let's check it out.
That's all the world say. This is just for Muslims.
It's just for Muslims?
They're not allowed to.
Jews are not allowed to pray up here?
They pray in the church.
They could pray in their church, not here?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened to peace and tolerance, though?
Peace not in the religion. Peace not in the religion. Peace not in the religion.
Yeah, said it 3 times there for you in case you didn't hear. Now, he's an imam at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You know where that's located?
No.
That's on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. So he knows his stuff. He pretty much has an Al-Azhar University hat, which means he graduated from the most prominent Islamic university in the world, in Al-Azhar in Cairo, Egypt. There's no peace in the religion. See, what he means is aslam taslim. In other words, submit and you will have peace. Submit to Islam. Because the early Islamic jurists who came up with the 4 major schools of Islamic jurisprudence, the Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools, they divided the world into 2 abodes, the Dar al-Islam and the Dar al-Harb. The Dar al-Islam is the parts of the world that are under Sharia, the abode of peace. And the Dar al-Harb is the parts of the world that are not under Sharia, Dar al-Harb. And it was the goal for ongoing Muslim conquests after the time of Muhammad to bring the whole world under Dar al-Islam. So, when the whole world is under Islam, then the whole world is under peace, quote unquote. Submit and you will have peace. Now, what about justice? What do you think of? What does that mean?
That you can't, you're not going to be, due process. You're going to have your due process rights. You're not going to, fair treatment.
All right, there you go. Okay. Now, justice in Islam, let's look at this news story here. American woman loses custody battle for daughter in Saudi Arabia. Under Saudi law, which is based on Islamic law or Sharia, mothers generally retain day-to-day custody of sons until they turn 9, and daughters until they turn 7, while fathers remain their legal guardians. But Saudi courts prioritize ensuring that children are raised in accordance with Islam. According to court documents, the judge accepted Miss Vieira's ex-husband's arguments that she was unfit to raise Zina because she was a Westerner. So, in Islam, justice is defined by Sharia, Islamic law. So, if you know that, then you know that justice is actually better spelt just us. right?
Just Muslims.
So we have that.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's if you're not Muslim, then essentially you're not going to have peace or justice.
Now, what happens when CARE says they want to promote peace and justice and this stuff?
What's their own peace and justice?
Right. So if you don't know how an Islamist defines these terms, well, then you think, oh, that's no problem. We like peace and justice and all that, right? So,
Wow.
moving on to freedom. What do you think of, Guillermo?
The right to go about without any kind of restriction within liberty. All right, there you go. All right, fine. I'm making it too complex.
Okay, so Anjem Chowdhury says, contrary to popular misconception, Islam does not mean peace, but rather means submission to the commands of Allah alone. Therefore, Muslims do not believe in the concept of freedom of expression, as their speech and actions are determined by divine revelation and not based on people's desires. So, according to an Islamist, freedom is actually freedom from man-made laws. They see American laws as shirk. It's almost like putting something else on the level of God. They say, no, Islamic law is above man-made law. So you have it the other way around. You should be under Islam. When you are under Islamic law, well, then you're following God's law, not man's law. So, freedom is... I forgot to push the button there. Freedom from man-made laws is what freedom is. Now, human rights. What were we talking about earlier? When you think of the human rights, what document do we go to for that?
The Bill of Rights.
Well, Universal Declaration, or human rights. Yeah, human rights. Now, this Ayatollah, you see this type of headdress.
Yeah.
They're pretty Iranian, not Sunni, or not Saudi, I should say, or more Shiite, not Sunni. He says, as religion of humanity, Islam guarantees human rights. Well, again, that sounds great. We like human rights. However, you need to know that he's referring to, again, overall, Sharia, Islamic law, but precisely the Cairo Declaration of Human Rights, which was published in 1990, not 1948, which is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations. And the 1990 Cairo edition, or declaration, you can read it. It's all based on Sharia. I mean, there's a lot of Islamic language in there and stuff. Now, the interesting part, and this is the part that some people are kind of not liking and afraid of, is that the United Nations and the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is pretty much 57 Islamic nations in the Palestinian Authority, or including the Palestinian Authority, they've been working closely together. And look at this news headline here. This is June 23rd, 2019. UN poised to launch global ban on all criticism of Islam.
Wow.
OIC urges UN to tackle Islamophobia, declare it a form of racism. Okay, now Islam is a religion, not a race. So I don't even know why you call someone racist for talking about the religion, right? I mean, until Muslim is actually listed in the nationalities next to white and black and Asian, well, it's not a nationality.
That's a great point.
It's a religion.
And these are all recent articles. I mean, this is not. You're not going way down.
This here is March 2019.
Yeah, but the one before that was
June 23rd, 2019. Yeah. And then let's see here. OIC warns of hate speech against Muslims in Sri Lanka. That was July 4th, 2019. Denmark threatens woman critical of Islam with removal of foster child. Coptic Christian arrested for allegedly insulting Islam on Facebook in Egypt. Malaysian man gets 10 years in prison for insulting Islam on Facebook. So other countries are already under Sharia. They're already following the Cairo Declaration of Human Rights. All we need to do is look to other countries. That's why when I gave this presentation today, and when I'm on with your mom on her show in a bit, she wants to go through the exact 4 areas of American society that are being Islamized, and that's education, immigration, government, and churches. But here's the presentation on Islamic law that people can find on my Vimeo channel. And I'm not sure where you want to go in the presentation.
Yeah, why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and take a break. But Tony, let me tell you what, man, I appreciate you coming in, and I wish I was there. They need to name it All Republicans instead of the Republican Women's Federation. No, I'm joking with you. I've been there.
There's a lot of guys there, and actually, because I've spoken to a number of them in different cities before, I actually started putting in my advertisements. Yes, men are welcome. So come and
Sounds good. Lisa Moreno up next. She wants to go ahead and take the rest of the presentation with you. Tony Gurley, man. Tony G, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for all your insight again. And for all of you watching and listening on 1680, you can go to radicaltruth.net or Radical Truth on Facebook, and you can get on his Vimeo.
Yeah,
page.
Vimeo.com/Tony Gurley.
Sounds good. We'll be right back.
Lisa Moreno with Tony Gurley. We are so excited to have Tony Gurley here in the studio today. We are going to hear what you cannot hear anywhere else except on Talk Radio KGED 1680. Again, we are here with him live as our guest in studio with so much knowledge, a breadth and wealth of knowledge that he's going to share with us today. Tony, tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about.
Today, the presentation that you attended and a whole lot of people attended was a brand new presentation I just finished creating called Lights Out When Islam Rules America. I kind of made the title provocative like that. People were like, well, what do you mean? Like, because I was thinking about doing if Islam rules America. But I was like, no, I'm going to do when. Because technically, on the route that we are currently on, if things don't change, we're going to end up there anyway. Because the Islamist goal, the goal of Islam in general, is to have the whole world under Sharia, Islamic law. And you can't have the whole world unless you have the United States. So that's the goal. And they're working towards that goal, whether we know it's their goal or not, and whether we do anything to prevent it. It's not like they're like, oh, you're putting up a fight, so we're going to stop. I mean, their religion commands them to take over. Quran, Surah 48:28. Islam is supposed to be predominant reign over all other religions. So anyway, the Islamic worldview is something that a lot of people are not aware of. And I was talking with is the terms that Islamists use. They're the same terms that we use here in the West. So unless you ask them, what do you mean by that? You don't know. And you never question it because it sounds just fine. And of course, if there's one guy carrying a gun, shooting people because they're non-Muslim, and then you have another guy who says, oh, I'm Muslim, and he's wearing a suit, and he seems like a regular guy. Oh, well, he's peaceful. That's why ISIS makes the nightly news, and the Muslim Brotherhood and the front groups don't, because they're peaceful, compared to the person who's out there actually physically fighting. But the goal's the same. It's just that one group is impatient and one group is patient. And the 4 categories that I talked about today, after we started the whole presentation, and I just kind of gave a history of the life of Muhammad and how he got more aggressive and became more political and about jihad as he got more and more followers when he went from Mecca to Medina. Then we see when he died, his successors carried on what he told them to do. Mm-hmm. It would have been one thing if Muhammad died, they say, okay, let's just go about our business now, which actually some of them did. Some of them left Islam, and they had what was called the Ridda Wars, and that was actually his successors fighting former Muslims to bring them back to Islam, because they said he's dead, and the one of the successors were like, hey, if you serve God, well, God is still God. Yeah, Muhammad's a bit. So they fought him to get him back, and then it continued on. It was about fighting the kafir, the kuffar, the mushrik, the mushrikun. We talked about that today in the presentation, about fighting the unbelievers. And I can pull up the let's see, let me pull it up. Skipped over earlier. Let's see here. So when we get people probably be interested in these primary sources of Islam, because again, when we ask what is Islam, we need to ask, what is Islam according to Muhammad? Not according to your Muslim neighbor, coworker, or classmate who you love and loves America, was born in America, would never want to live under Sharia, but they're a Muslim. Why? Oh, because they're not an atheist. That's why they're a Muslim. Because they've been to a mosque. That's why they're a Muslim. You have nominal Muslims like you have nominal Christians and nominal everything else. Are they practicing or no? Maybe you have a Muslim neighbor who they know they pray 5 times a day. They fast during Ramadan. They'd like to make a trip to Mecca, but they haven't yet. But that's it. It's just like religious-based things, following the 5 pillars of Islam. Now, they have the right to do that. I mean, people say, oh, we need to just ban Islam. The law that bans Islam today can ban Christianity tomorrow.
Sure.
So we can't ban the religion. But what sets Islam apart from the other man-made religions out there is a religio-political system, a religion and political ideology combined. And when those political aspects take over or are being implemented and they go against the Constitution and Bill of Rights, that's where the problem comes in. So the 5 pillars of Islam are protected by the Constitution. I tell people all the time, Muslims and the Constitution can be compatible, but Sharia, Islamic law, and the Constitution cannot.
And it's very deep, and I think it's very complex in so many ways, because people such as myself, we work all day, we have families, we have responsibilities, and to have the basic knowledge, the basic foundation to understand what's actually happening before our very eyes, sometimes I think we don't realize that it's actually going on. When I heard you speak today, your whole approach to what you are educating, I would say, all of us on, is dynamic, because it's ever so changing and not constant, because it's evolving as we live day to day, and as you presented in the weeks and months and years to come, decades to come, we're able to see up ahead, just as you're traveling to a destination and you have your map, and we know we're starting at point A and our arrival is at point B. Well, everywhere in between is where I see that you are taking us when you're talking to us, when you're explaining everything in such detail. And not only are you explaining it with such detail and such depth and wealth of knowledge, but you are also giving us facts. You're giving us events that are happening currently, and this is how it's all being tied into what we can see for the future to come.
The reason why I made the title that way is because of the road that we're on, and we look to the UK, which is way far ahead of us as far as Islamization. And then you look to Canada, which is actually ahead of the US as well. They're right north of us. You know, part of the reason why America, Canada has not been Islamized is because we have a huge ocean between us and the Middle East. People in the Middle East, if they can take it, I mean, they could technically walk to Europe if they go a certain route, you know?
Right.
You can't do that. So what happens when we just open up the floodgates of mass migration? When we say, hey, it doesn't matter how far away you are, we have airplanes. That is how a ton of people will come here very quickly. And that's how, and of course, they're coming through Mexico. We have one of the slides I showed, over 1 million people who are trying to come in. Now, they're going to change the society religiously, financially, politically. I will have this presentation recorded and on the Vimeo, my Vimeo channel, hopefully in the near future. But right here, the Quran is, according to most Muslims in the world, the eternal word of Allah that was passed down to Muhammad as piecemeal on an as-needed basis over 23 years of his life. And then we also have the Hadith. These are the things that Muhammad said. Oh, I skipped way too far ahead. Let's see here. Go the other way. And if you're saying, oh, I want to see that slide, this will all be in the presentation. There we go. Okay. Hadith, what Muhammad said and did. That's Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Then we have the Sirah literature. These are the biographies of Muhammad. These are the earliest ones. If you take the Hadith and the Sirah, then you have the Sunnah. This is the example of Muhammad himself. You take the Quran and the Sunnah, you have Sharia. This is how Islamic law is derived. There's 4 major schools of Islamic jurisprudence, the Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools. And when different countries are under Sharia, they're under different schools of Sharia. Some are more strict than others, and they implement it in different areas of life. Some are only to criminal punishment. Some are marriage laws and all that kind of stuff too. So anyway, when Jesus died and rose from the dead in AD 30 up there in Israel, about 540 years later, Muhammad was born, according to tradition. He was born in Mecca. He migrated to what was known as Yathrib, which is now known as Medina. And as you can see here in this chart, the first 13 years of preaching, he only had about 150 followers there. But then he fled to Medina. That was the migration. This was the Hijrah, the beginning of the Islamic calendar. That's when politics and jihad increased. As the power and followers and the money increased, then the politics and the jihad did as well. And we read in Quran chapter 9, which the Quran is not chronological. This is actually near the end chronologically of the Quran. Even though there's 114 chapters, chapter 9 is second to last. Right here, Muhammad said, fight those among the people of the book, i.e., those are the Jews and the Christians, who do not believe in Allah nor the last day, nor forbid what Allah and his messenger have forbidden, nor embrace the religion of truth until they pay the jizya, that's the poll tax, with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. They're referring to the kafir, the unbelievers. You can see here the percentage of the Quran, Sirah, and Hadith that are referring to the kafir. And this is the spread of Islam from 622 to 750. And when they spread, they had the unbelievers in mind, and there was 3 options for non-Muslims: convert, which is submit and become a Muslim; fight, and then of course you're going to die fighting. But the third choice for people was jizya, or dhimmatud, become a dhimmi and pay the jizya. And I'm just going to go and skip forward a few slides here, because this basically just talks about dhimmatud, and Christians and Jews basically having to pay a poll tax to keep their head on their shoulders for another year.
Wow.
Islam continued to spread. We see today, this is a 2018 map, the darker the green, the more the Muslim population. As I was telling Guillermo, 8th century, 700, 701, the Middle East was 95% Christian.
Wow.
Today it's less than 6%.
Oh my goodness.
So Islam according to Muhammad is what happened, not Islam according to your American, Muslim neighbor. And we still see today, there are Christians still signing these dhimmi pacts, paying money in order to not die, and also because they don't want to convert to Islam. So that's the third choice. Only 5 Jews left in Cairo. This came out July 9th. Boko Haram reportedly issued dire warning to Christians in Niger: leave or be killed. Court acquits 2 men accused of burning a Christian couple alive in Pakistan. This just happened in the last week. Syrian Christian woman gang raped and stoned to death in Idlib by Islamist rebels. The autopsy revealed that Susan had been repeatedly raped and tortured for over the course of 9 hours before finally being murdered by stoning. Some of her former students and neighbors were among the perpetrators. So we keep going through these stories of people following Islam according to Muhammad. And I know we want to get to these 4 aspects. I'm going to go and skip forward. People are getting a little teaser on what else is in the presentation itself. But these are the 4 aspects.
Yes.
You know.
So looking at these aspects, what concerns me most, and I look at my neighbors, my neighborhood, I look at our families, our worlds of employment. I look at everything around us, right? Our children go to school, our family members go to school, we go to work. Government is intertwined with us at everything that we do all the time. And it's interesting because you cover each of these aspects one by one and how it will evolve in the future.
Yeah, and what's happening in these different areas of society. I give examples of what's happening in other countries currently, so people can learn from their mistakes instead of your own. You know,
Right.
We look to the UK as far as what has happened to it because of the mass migration. We look to the other countries in Europe that have. I mean, Sweden is now widely known as the rape capital of Europe.
Wow.
I mean, there's a ton of refugees who are going there. They're not assimilating. They are actually purposely going and taking the handouts. It's not surprising that the highest amount of immigration is in the welfare states of Europe.
Sure.
And this is also happening in America, not as high of a degree right now. But again, we look to those countries, we know what our future is if we don't learn from their mistakes.
Right. And so starting with the first one, education, what do you see being the current situation and where the educational system will take us?
Well, the video that I showed in that, and I'll just go to a still clip of it right now. But if you watch the presentation, you'll see the video. But this woman gives this talk on C-SPAN in 1989. I mean, how many people were watching that 30 years ago and listening to her saying that education is one of the most important areas for Muslims to address? You know, she talks about we need to make, if our goal, long-term goal of making America Muslim, all of America Muslim, we have to have some short-term and long-term goals. And we need to be strategic about how we go about it. We're not going to accomplish our goal. She talks about her daughter who had notes sent home from school asking, well, what does she mean? Because you keep saying, no, I'm not American, I'm Muslim. What does she mean? And she basically teaches her daughter, no, you're Muslim. That is your identity. That is your identity first. And so that happens there. But then after I show that, saying, hey, this happened 30 years ago, who was paying attention to that? I mean, this Islamization of education would not only include a field trip to a mosque or Islamic center. Minneapolis public school kids draw pictures of Ilhan Omar and write reports about her.
Sorry to interrupt you, Tony. And this is in the United States.
Yeah.
This is not in a different country. This is happening in our country.
Yes, and I will actually say which places these are. State of Washington, U.S. school urging teachers to bless Muslim students in Arabic. New Jersey school lets Muslims interrupt classes to convert students. I started talking about the Islamization of American schools and how this watered-down, sugar-coated Walt Disney version of Islam is basically replacing Islam according to Muhammad in the public school books. They're whitewashing them. Wow. And this is all done by the Muslim Brotherhood front groups who are trying to further the cause of Islam in America. This doesn't happen at the here 7th grade California public school system. Islamist infiltration of American universities, which has been happening for a long time. Michigan, Wayne State professor peddles fake Islamic history. Now, the interesting thing, and I didn't even mention it today, okay? This next slide is a show that Raymond Ibrahim and I did. And this is probably something that people have heard about in the news recently. There is a guy, his name is Raymond Ibrahim, who was supposed to speak at the U.S. Army War College. And he was supposed to speak on his brand new book called Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West. And going to give it at the U.S. Army War College. CARE heard about it, all of a sudden contacted the War College, made a big fuss about it, and they ended up canceling it. So
What?
The U.S. War College canceled, and they caved to CARE, right? They canceled it. And here's the thing. Raymond Ibrahim is from Egypt. where the Muslim Brotherhood was founded 91 years ago. He holds multiple degrees in history, one of which is from Fresno State under Victor Davis Hanson.
Really?
Back when he used to,
Wow.
I don't think he teaches there anymore.
Wow.
Raymond is fluent in English, Arabic, and Greek, reading and writing. And CARE attacked him and attacked the War College. They couldn't say anything at all. They did not mention one thing in his entire 300, 400-page book of Islamic history saying, oh, this is wrong. Here's what's true. Instead, they just called him a racist Islamophobe. And he's promoting white nationalism. How much are we hearing that?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So I've been actually trying to set up debates for Raymond. And this professor here, who peddles fake Islamic history, he had a friend who I was talking back and forth with, and I asked him, hey, you want to debate Raymond? And he says, well, I don't know. I don't think he'd want to debate me. And I said, oh, he'll debate anyone. I already talked with him.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, like, oh, let's see his bio to see if he's a reputable opponent. I send them Raymond's bio, and all of a sudden he has like every excuse in the book of why he can't debate all of a sudden. So anyway, interesting tidbit there.
That is amazing. That is so amazing. I think that at the end of the day, the more people are aware of what's going on in our educational systems and what have you, it's so critical that everyone be aware that this is in our country. This is happening now at all levels of education. We talked about 7-year-olds, universities, high schools. It's not just in one institution. It's not one just age level. It's like a prong that's just growing and it's infiltrating. That's the educational system. What else?
Jordan Peterson, how many people look up to him?
Right.
He actually was dropped by Cambridge because he took a picture with this man wearing a T-shirt saying, I'm a proud Islamophobe. I mean, that's how far this Islamist-focused political correctness is going. Right? It's not just regular political correctness, but it's actually being pushed by the Islamists themselves. So
And that's the scary part, that when people are not aware of what's going on around them is one thing, but right now I think there's a lot of Americans waking up to knowing that this is actually happening, and because everyone knows that this is actually happening, that it's something that needs to be addressed. Now, if we don't know something is evolving right before our eyes, how do we attack it? But this is obviously happening, and there's widespread knowledge now, and this is what you're bringing to light, I think, more often than not. And a lot of us aren't even aware that it may be in our own backyard, it might be in our own school, but until and then we do something about it, it's a cry. Someone spoke to me after you spoke today at the Women's Federated Republican here in Fresno, and they said, he reminds me of Paul Revere.
wow.
Coming out in a way where he's saying, basically, he is telling us what's to come, such as Paul Revere, right? The British are coming, the British are coming. Well, you're out here to sound the alarm, to let us know this is what's coming up, this is what's down the line. And looking at these stats, this is really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about this?
This right here, as you can see, are a number of American universities that have received U.S. taxpayer funding, but also look at that column on the right, funding from Muslim nations. Georgetown University, U.S. taxpayer funding, $484,558. How about from Muslim nations? $377 million.
Wow.
You look at that whole list there, 10, 20 times the amount of U.S. taxpayer. Now, who's going to have the bigger say in what we want your curriculum to teach, what we want you to whitewash, etc.? I mean, you look at the names of these universities, I mean, they have well-known Islamophiles, people who aren't Arab, aren't Muslims, but just are in the back pocket of the Muslims and just love writing these books on, Islam according to Walt Disney rather than Muhammad. So we see these different schools here. As you see there, University of Texas Austin, no Muslim nation funding. However, as you can see here, biased professors and politicized classrooms. So this report examines 8 tenured professors at the University of Texas Austin Center for Middle Eastern Studies. So basically, if you want your child or grandchild to have a degree in anti-Semitism, you know which school to send them to. As I said today, a news story came out that the Trump administration is now beginning to impact of foreign funding of U.S. colleges and universities. And that, of course, took care of the education aspect of those 4 areas.
And you see, this is a critical aspect of what we're talking about. I see a lot of the Facebook comments coming through right now, and they're saying, why don't we get out and do something about this? Why don't we get out and protest? We can do that in America as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
What happened this last couple of weeks over this getting rid of the pledge, the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Is in Minnesota.
Yes.
I don't know how many people know that just happened to be Ilhan Omar's district.
Right.
But they said, let's get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance. And what did people do? They showed up with flags. They showed up saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Is like they came in such great numbers that it put all the other business aside, having to deal with this.
Praise God.
So enough people made a big deal about it. So that's the same thing. I mean, what happens if a ton of people go to a particular university and say, hey, we know you're teaching this watered-down, sugar-coated Walt Disney version of Islam, or whatever other aspect that you want to get into here. People just need to speak up. Be bold about it. It's, and the interesting thing too, which some people don't understand, especially if maybe they're not Christians, or they just think, oh, if you disagree, well, then that's disrespectful or hateful or anything. We're Radical Truth is a ministry. We're Christians. We focus on all people, but we just have a heart for Muslims in particular. And we have this healthy middle, because there are people out there, non-Christians, who demonize Islam and they demonize Muslims. Oh, they're all the devils. They're all lying all the time. If they told you what they had for breakfast this morning, they're lying. Taqiyya. I mean, it's like way overused in the West, right? Then you have the other side where it's like, oh, we don't need to know what Islam is according to Muhammad. We don't need to share the gospel with Muslims. We just need to love them. Oh, what are you doing to love them? Well, they don't have an answer for that either. It's like these two dichotomies. We have this healthy middle. We don't sugarcoat Islam. This is what it is according to Muhammad. However, we see Muslims as people made in the image of God, who Jesus Christ died for. They need the gospel, just like every atheist needs the gospel, every Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, etc. So we have a healthy middle. Yes, we criticize Islam. You go to Radical Truth on Facebook, you're going to get the daily news with commentary you don't get on the mainstream media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube channel. We have a 20-hour apologetics to Islam course that people can go through for free on YouTube. You go to my Vimeo channel, you get all the public presentations I've created, like today's, which I do need to turn into one, and then all the shows that I do each week as well. But yeah, immigration, government, and churches are the other 3 categories.
Really quick before we go into immigration, some of the comments coming through on Facebook Live. We have Dina, forgive me, saying Omar is illegal. Time for her to go. Angie said, you don't like our country any more than leave to yours and practice your pledge and yours. And someone else is commenting as well. Actually, Angie, we are not against their religion. We are against radicalism and don't change our country. That's exactly the point that you made just prior, that it's not the religion that we're against. It's the geopolitical, you were saying?
Well, some people, they say, oh, it's not a religion at all. It's all politics, whatever term they use. It is a religion. Like I said, you look at the life of Muhammad when he was in Mecca. He had no followers. He was just calling people to Islam. It was religious based. It's still technically religious based. It's just that there's a political aspect. It's a religio-political system. That's the most accurate term. A religion and a political ideology combined. Now, people have said, oh, we just need to ban Islam. I keep saying, no, that isn't the answer.
Correct.
If you ban Islam today, the law that allows you to ban Islam today can ban Christianity tomorrow.
That's an important point. That's where we get into when we speak about religious liberty. It's so important that we realize that we have to be careful. We also have to take this very strategically when we're trying to think about how it can impact our families and our generations to come. If something is instituted now or major policy is changed, whatever is instituted now, say, like you say, if we banned Islam or banned something specific, that can be used as well in a future in a different way, same way, and it can be just as detrimental.
And think about this too. It's like, if a Muslim prays 5 times a day, is that going to change the Constitution?
Right.
If they make a trip to Mecca, is that going to change? No. If they follow the 5 pillars of Islam, not only is that protected by the Constitution, but it's going to not affect the Constitution and Bill of Rights in any way. It's when you bring Sharia into it. And Muslims say, oh, well, everything's Sharia. Praying 5 times a day is Sharia. Yes, it is. But Sharia, if you look at a country that's under full Sharia, it's not just religious based. It's when you walk out your doors, whether you're a Muslim or not, you are impacted by that. You know, if you're say, hey, I'm an atheist, and you're walking through Saudi Arabia, they'll say, oh, you're an atheist, so none of our Islamic law applies to you. You're living under it. So that's the thing, is if you look, Islam, Sharia is a theocracy. You know, there's a time when people are bringing up the handmaid tale or whatever, right? And saying, oh, well, look, you know, Christianity is just as bad. Okay, the handmaid tale is a fictional theonomy. That's completely different than an actual Islamic theocracy. Right? You look at Saudi Arabia under full Sharia, Iran under full Sharia. You look at my presentation on Sharia, you'll get the whole maps and what school they follow, how much they implement, all that kind of thing. So that's why it's different depending on what school. Because, you know, one could say, oh, if you're homosexual, it's the death penalty. Another one says you're homosexual, oh, you get 80 lashes. So, you know, all depends on what school you live under. But yes, if a Muslim wants to pray 5 times a day, give money to charity, fast during the month of Ramadan, it's like that doesn't mess with the Constitution. It's once you bring the political aspects into it, and the Islamists, they do want to change the Constitution. I have a video in here of them saying that, as you saw.
Right.
Now, this is an hour-long presentation altogether, so people are, again, this one is not available on the Vimeo channel yet, but it will be soon. Now, if you want to get into immigration, we'll go ahead and show people that video. And this is Sweden, right?
Yes.
We'll go ahead and check this out.
Okay.
من السويد شيخ أحمد من السويد مرحبا بك.
السلام عليكم أخ رشيد.
سلام ليك تفضل أخوي.
Oh, you might have to lower your lower third there so people can see the...
نعم.
أنا طلعت
People can't see the translation with the lower third.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if there's a way to get rid of that or not.
It's covering with our logo.
نعم.
Okay, we'll go past that. We'll go past that. I'll just leave it on this.
Good.
I'll just leave it on here. Yeah, go ahead and watch that video because it's basically a guy living in Sweden saying, we are here to further the cause of Islam. And Brother Rashid's asking him, oh, so you're living on their money, their taxpayer dollar? He says, yeah. And he says, oh, that's Allah's money. You know, Allah is providing that money to us.
I heard that
And-
during your presentation today. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, like I said,
It was-
I was telling people, go online because it's
Yes.
going to be way higher quality visuals. We had to work with the audio system, which wasn't super clear. So people are really, I had a lot of, like I said, I really appreciate all the people who came and all the positive feedbacks. Like I said, today was the first time I gave this presentation. So anyway, so this is referring to, again, what's happening in other countries. This is, okay, migrant child gang puts fear into neighbors. Swedish children scared to go outside. I'm going to give you a little run through of news stories here. Assyrian Christians who fled genocide in Syria for Sweden find they are under the same kind of threats by Muslims in Sweden. European girls in Vienna are wearing headscarves to avoid assaults by male Muslim migrants. That's actually the origin of the covering.
Wow.
It was so that women would not get molested or get raped. I mean, if Ilhan Omar went back home and took off her hijab, she would be punished. So she has all the freedom in the world to take it off here. Why doesn't she? She's actually choosing to wear it, and the origin of it is a symbol of oppression. Why doesn't she take it off?
Right.
So she knows Sharia. She's actually letting people know, I am Sharia compliant, at least personally, and that's fine. People can wear a head covering. Now, the girls here, they're actually wearing it to not get harassed or raped or what have you, because the Islamic traditional view here is that women's bodies are evil, and that's why they need to be covered up. And a woman has to wear a hijab. It's really the way that it is, because okay, you talk about the whole 72 versions for men. Men can have 4 wives, they can unlimited sex slaves, and all this stuff. But at the same time, a woman's body's evil needs to be covered up. And like in Egypt, if women don't wear the hijab, they get harassed, they get their hair pulled. Worst case, they get raped, because if you're not wearing it, you're not submitting to Islam. You're safe, quote unquote, if you have the head covering. If you're not, then you could get molested, you could get touched, you could get raped, etc. And guess what? It's the woman's fault
Oh my goodness.
because she wasn't covering up.
Wow.
If you're under Sharia, if a woman is raped, she has to have 4 male witnesses.
To prove it.
So basically, if your gang rapers don't turn themselves in, well, no one's going to be punished for nothing.
Wow.
And if you don't convict anyone, then you automatically get charged for adultery. And then you got, 80 lashes to being stoned to death when it wasn't even your fault. So anyway, here you got women wearing the headscarf just to not get harassed. Because if you're not wearing it, you're a whore, you love sex, and, they treat you that way.
Wow.
So, Denmark admits country has big problem with criminal migrants. Australia, there are so many violent home invasions by mainly Sudanese Muslim migrants that police don't even respond to emergency calls about them. Now, what about France? Now, they're yelling Allahu Akbar, which does not mean God is great. It means God is greater. Greater than what? Well, greater than this democracy that I'm living under, greater than this oppression that I'm feeling. It means God is greater than this Christian church, etc. Now, people saw in this news story, because it's a historical church, right? People don't know that in France, 2 churches get attacked every single day.
That's amazing.
That is the norm there. This one
Wow.
made headline news because of how old it was.
Wow.
So here is a map of Catholic churches attacked in France between 2015 and 2019. Some of them were destroyed. Compare that to the amount of mosques that are now in Germany.
Wow.
Over 3,000 mosques, and Germany's about the size of California. So imagine 3,000 mosques between Los Angeles County and the Sacramento Valley. And that's what Germany is like. Germany issues an early warning report about the rise of Islamist anti-Semitism. Not surprising. It's not surprising that Mohammed is the #1 name for baby boys now in Berlin, and the top name 5 years in a row in London. And if you take into consideration there's 600,000 migrants that entered Britain in 1 year, there's 660,000 migrants waiting to get to Europe from Libya, and over half of Arab young adults want to migrate, and then you combine that with news stories like no Christians among 1,112 Syrian refugees resettled in the UK, it's no surprise that this is how a Western country will be impacted religiously, financially, and politically.
Right. And this is where we're at today. We see this happening across the world, across the globe. Facts are there. A lot of times the media doesn't cover what we are learning right now. Why is it that there's still that narrative worldwide to not inform or educate the masses of what's happening, truly what's happening?
Well, I think there's a couple different angles there. When you talk about like Christian persecution, at the very beginning of the presentation, there's a lot of, as you saw, horrific Christian persecution. Interesting news story that came out quite a while back. His name is Matt. I forget his Matt Walsh, I believe. Pretty popular blog writer. He had this great article on, I think it was called "Christians in America Don't Never Forget How Easy You Have It," and he talks about the Christian persecution in other countries. Yes, the mainstream media never talks about it, and he's like, it's really interesting too. He's like, the mainstream media doesn't like to talk about Christian persecution because it makes such a compelling case for Christianity.
Right.
Yeah, really great article. I mean, I think that is on point as far as why Christian persecution. You go online, if you go to radicaltruth.net, you're seeing Christian persecution all the time that you don't see in the mainstream media. However, as far as the Islamization, well, there's an agenda there. Why would they put on the mainstream media, oh, look what mass migration's doing to Europe?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
you have to go online and search for it. And if you do, you'll see. If you don't do your research, then you don't have an excuse for not knowing what's happening in other places. And if you don't learn from other countries' mistakes, then you make your own mistakes. And that's the worst case, is you learn from your mistakes rather than someone else's. Switzerland, over 80% of Somali migrants on welfare.
Wow.
Get out of here. Liberal Belgian woman who invited migrants to camp in her garden Can't get them to leave following incidents of violence and aggression. And yet Pope Francis keeps telling the world it needs to welcome and integrate migrants. He says that the world needs to allow mass immigration and take in a ton of refugees rather than building walls. But he hasn't opened up the Vatican saying, hey, migrants, as many as you want, come on in, stay as long as you want. He seems to forget that the 40-foot tall, 12-foot thick walls of the Vatican City were built for the purpose of warding off ongoing Islamic invasions in the year 852. But this guy, Cardinal Robert Sarah, who the Pope should be listening to, says the West will disappear as a result of mass migration. Adding that Islam will invade the world and completely change culture, anthropology, and moral vision. If the West continues in this fatal way, there's a great risk that due to a lack of birth, it will disappear, invaded by foreigners, just as Rome has been invaded by barbarians. He then added, my country is predominantly Muslim. I think I know what reality I'm talking about. When he talks about the birth rate, is that the replacement rate of any country needs to be, I think, at least 2 point. I don't know how you can have 2.1 children, but they say it's 2.1 or more to at least replace you and your husband, you and your wife, etc.
Aging population.
And the birth rate is going down among many countries. I think it's the Hispanic population combined with other, they say, in America it's fine because of the Hispanic population or immigration or whatever. It's beyond the replacement rate, which is good. But in these European countries, you have people having maybe one child.
Right.
Now, if you bring in not only millions of migrants from other countries, and the average Muslim family has 6 to 9 children, birth rate alone, you're going to be outnumbered.
Right.
And that's why in France, they say that by the year 2050, there'll be more Muslims in France than French people or native French people. And this book here, which I mentioned in the presentation, is called Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad. This is a book people need to read because it lets you know that it's not just the wall that people need to worry about. They think, fix the wall, build the wall, you don't need to worry about migration anymore. Yes, that'll help with illegal immigration, but there are so many loopholes in the legal system that we're having a problem just there alone. And the whole refugee resettlement program that's been exploited for far too long. His book talks about that. So it lets you know it's not just illegals that you need to worry about. And then Daniel Greenfield, he just came out this article yesterday, Lessons for America from India's War Against Illegal Muslim Migrants. Building a border wall is a partial answer, but the real answer lies in using military force to secure the border, ending the processing of asylum requests, and distinguishing Americans from illegal aliens. The illegal migrant issue is not about human rights or racism. It's about political power. Democrats opposed Vietnamese refugees for the same reason that they now support open borders with Mexico.
Wow. The open borders situation that is now the narrative of so many, the thought process of this country not being welcoming, which we all know is not the case. We are extremely welcoming, but that we need to be more welcoming to the point that there is no process to come into this country. That plays into the narrative, plays into the agenda that we're talking about. The concern now is, depending on the upcoming elections, in the next presidential election, the transition of power, if it were not the case that we would continue to have the same president, Donald J. Trump, the impact that would have, based on everything that we're talking about right now, would just be astronomical. It would precipitate, in my eyes, as an observer, the exponential rapidity or just rapidness of how fast the sequence of time this can all happen.
I didn't create this presentation with the mindset of, I know this is going to happen no matter what. I was thinking about calling it If Islam Rules America, but I wanted to make people more concerned than that. So I said when. Like, oh, when? When is it? Like, you have a date? kind of thing. It's like, no, it's like, but the road that we're on, and if we look to other countries who are further ahead on the road that we're on, well, how can we keep from becoming like them unless we do something different. So I would love for this never to take place. I mean, I showed the 5 phases of the Muslim Brotherhood's plan for America. I talked about in the government section of this how the Obama administration switched or changed the DHS. A friend of mine was one of the founding members of the Department of Homeland Security. And back after 9/11, it was a law enforcement based approach. And under Obama administration, it was changed to a civil rights based approach, and not even of Americans, but of Muslims, foreign nationals, etc. So there's these policies that have been put in place. That is why everything changed as far as DHS is more about protecting rights than finding terrorists.
Do you have that slide? I remember that slide when you spoke. It was so impressive to me. It talks exactly about what you're saying, and it puts it more in a context of being able to understand the point where we're at and where we were when President Obama was in.
Let me show this picture first, because this is pretty impactful for people today when they saw that picture.
Yes.
If you can see. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. Oh, no, it didn't go. It's not feeding at all right now. Let's see here.
Meanwhile, that comes up. The impact that the prior administration had in what we are seeing now, I think really, really speaks volumes of how much we didn't know, Tony, if that makes sense. And my concern is you're presenting information right now that we didn't know and that we are now coming to know more clear with facts. My concern is what's happening now, we need to know now and not in the future, because by then the devastating impact that it can have in our country, our society, our families, and our neighborhoods, our schools and institutions, it's more of a prevention is what is in my mind. How can we stop this, prevent it from continuing on this direction that it's going? That's my biggest concern.
Well, you got to think, what can the average person do? The person who has a full-time job in whatever field it happens to be in, they have coworkers who they can say, hey, have you seen this presentation? Check it out. And that's the thing. Let the presentation do the talking for you. Don't say, hey, you need to watch this. You need to get educated, whatever. Say, hey, can you watch this presentation? Let me know what you think about it. You know, put it in their court. Let them watch it, and then tell you what they think about it. But guess what? The video's doing the presentation is doing the talking for you. It's just not like you have to write down all the notes so you can talk to your friend tomorrow. Hey, check this out. Let me know what you think about it. You know, educate people. That's the first thing. Educate everybody, because if they know what's going on, they know who is affiliated with who,
right?
Who is supporting who. Well, I'm not going to vote for them. I'm not going to vote for him or her. So that's the thing. Education's the most important thing. We talked about how people aren't seeing the Christian persecution that happens daily in other countries.
Right.
What's happening with the Muslim migrants in other countries. It's being either ignored purposely, or you just have so many things going on in your life that you don't actually seek it out for yourself, which it is out there. So it's really, education's the main thing. Everybody knowing about it. If everyone knew that the Muslim Brotherhood is just fine with a 100-year timeline of bringing America under Islam, well, then you're going to be looking out for anyone who's affiliated with them. But that's the thing. Again, a lot of people don't know anything about Islam.
And I was one of those people until I heard you speak a couple of months ago, maybe 6-8 weeks ago. I had heard of this topic, not to the extent to when you spoke. It was just a whole different world, a new language that was speaking to me, and I was so impressed and so impacted by the information that you gave. That's when I contacted you and asked if you would come in studio and join us, because it's just so powerful. We're going to give Tony Gourlay a break so we can go to some intermission time here with commercial break. We will be back with Tony Gourlay from radicaltruth.net in just a moment.
Something's up with this feed, because I'm have to.
fall.
There isn't a way to get rid of the lower third, right?
Right here because
We were trying to show a video that had subtitles. Okay. Yeah, we'll get it off when we do we can do the subtitle one. We can go back to the refugee one. Just to go back to that, and we'll go skip forward.
Can you go back to it?
Yeah.
Where are you? Lisa Moreno filling in this evening with Tony Gurley. Tony, all of our Facebook audience and our audience, we're family here. And I have to get this out. I just have to say it because if not, I'm going to forget. The first time I heard you speak, I wrote your name down, Tony Gurley, and I spelled it Gurlay.
Yeah.
Totally off the mark, right? And so your last name is spelled
Gurule. It's like this energy drink here. Guru LE.
so I could
Tony G's easiest. People say gorilla, Ja Rule. I hear everything. Tony G's easiest.
For purposes of looking you up and making sure that we can connect with you and your audience, that's yours now, I'm sure. Everyone's becoming very familiar and comfortable with listening to all the breadth and wealth of knowledge that you have. It says Gurule.
Yeah, I'm banned on Facebook, so don't look up me. Look up Radical
Truth
on Facebook.
RadicalTruth.net.
Yeah, RadicalTruth.net's the website, but if you go to Radical Truth on Facebook, it's Radical Truth 777.
Okay.
That's the username on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram.
So if I'm a Facebook user and I'm watching you right now live on Facebook,
just go to Radical Truth, and you'll see a white circle with Radical in blue, and then Truth is in blue, except the T is a cross, and it's burgundy. Like it, follow it, and then go to your settings and put all posts.
Okay.
Because if you don't choose all posts, they'll just tell you, oh, these are the ones that are most relevant for you, and they decide what you think, what they think you want to see and stuff.
Right.
So like it, follow it, and then choose all posts for what you see. And you'll get the daily, usually 4 or 5, sometimes more posts a day.
Nice.
You're going to get news. You don't get the mainstream media. You're going to get commentary. If you like the Islamist thinking commentary that I'm talking about today and what our ministry talks about, that is what you will get on the social media. Facebook is the most interactive. That is where most of the posts go. That is where follow-up, update to news will be in that thread. Where Twitter, it's like, okay, here's the posts. Instagram, here's the posts. There's not a whole lot of interaction. If you want to follow, that's great. Again, YouTube, Radical Truth. And on my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Tony Gurley, you'll see the presentation on the Muslim Brotherhood, on Sharia, fabricating Jesus. If you want to learn about what the cults teach about Jesus that's false and all that kind of stuff. And Colliding Worldviews, the weekly show that I do, all the other shows I've done in the past. Over 400 videos on my Vimeo channel. And today's presentation that we're talking about, that is the next presentation that will show up on the Vimeo channel soon.
And that's what I wanted. So RadicalTruth.net on Facebook, RadicalTruth.net.
No. RadicalTruth.net's the website
the
itself.
Website, and Facebook is Radical Truth 777.
Yeah. Right.
But the Vimeo channel, that's why I wanted to talk about your last name. So it's Vimeo, Vimeo, /
Yeah.
And
/
And then Tony.
Forward means the top is to the right. So yeah, / Tony, Gurule.
That's what I wanted, because I know the Vimeo channel has a lot of what your ministry is as far as the videos, all your great interviews. And here we see the RadicalTruth.net, Facebook, the internet and site, and then Facebook is Radical Truth 777. I'm going to get this memorized.
Yeah, Facebook.
Right?
Here's the thing. If you go to radicaltruth.net, up on the top, you'll see social media icons.
Nice.
For Facebook,
Everything's
Instagram, and Twitter.
interconnected.
And then if you click on videos, there'll be 2 options. YouTube, what does it say? Our YouTube channel, and then underneath it says Tony's Vimeo channel.
Nice.
So if you just go to radicaltruth.net, you can find everything.
We'll be good. So,
and also, too, if you go to Vimeo and you actually have a Vimeo account, or you just want to create one for the sake of subscribing to my channel, you'll get automatic email notifications whenever I add a new show or add a new presentation like this one will be.
Right. We were talking about the 4 aspects of impact in the areas of impact: education, immigration, government, and churches. And now I believe we can go to that video that you wanted to show earlier.
Yeah, we talked about the education. We didn't go through the whole thing. So again, we're just going to need little snippets of what you're going to get in the full presentation. In the education, we basically covered that one. The immigration, we started off with a video, but had subtitles. We couldn't see it with the lower third. So let's go ahead and go to that now. And this is a caller from Sweden that called into Brother Rashid's
من
show.
السويد شيخ أحمد من السويد مرحبا بك.
السلام عليكم أخ رشيد.
سلام ليك تفضل أخوي.
أخ رشيد،
نعم.
أنا طلعت على الآيات اللي حكيتها
أها.
وهو كلهم صحيح، ونحن لسنا خجلين في ديننا وسنظل نقاتل حتى آخر يوم في حياتنا.
نعم.
وكل ما قلت هو صح، ونقاتلهم في السويد وسنقاتلكم في أينما كنتم حتى تقولون لا إله إلا الله.
يعني أنت تقول لنا أنا سأقاتل أي واحد غير مسلم حتى يصير مسلم.
لحد آخر يوم بحياتنا، وسنأخذ السويد ونأخذ أوروبا كلها أيضا.
وأنت الآن في السويد.
أنا في السويد.
عند الكفار يعني.
نعم.
تأكل من أموالهم وتشرب من
نحن ناكل من أموال الله ليس من أموالهم.
يعني تأخذ من الحكومة أيضا تستفيد منها وكل شيء.
أي نحن ناكل من أموال الله ليس أموالهم.
طيب لماذا لا تذهب إلى أرض الإسلام مثلا إلى مكة إلى مسقط رأس النبي إلى المدينة المنورة حتى تستمتع بقبر النبي وأرض الإسلام وتستمتع بالإسلام في أرضه؟ لماذا ذهبت عند الكفار؟
نحن هنا في محمدينية لننشر ديننا.
لكن أنت تعرف أنه حرام أنك تترك بلاد الإسلام وتعيش في بلاد الكفر دون اضطرار.
بلاد الإسلام هي بلاد الله بأكملها، كلها خريطة العالم.
طيب إذا أنا أسألك في هذه النصوص لما قال محمد لقد جئتكم بالذبح، أنت تقول هذا الكلام أنه صحيح؟
صحيح 100%.
وأنا أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله، هي أيضا صحيح 100%.
نعم، وسنقاتلهم ونحن لسنا خجلون في ديننا.
طيب كيف تقول أنه رحمة للعالمين؟ ما هو تعريف الرحمة؟ رحمة للعالمين كيف يعني؟
رحمهم عندما يدفعون الجزية ولا يقتلهم، ليست رحمة؟
منتهى الرحمة. طيب
So there you learned what mercy means according to an Islamist.
Right.
But also too, they willingly admit, yeah, we're here to further the religion. We're here to take the handouts, the free food stamps, cars, homes, what have you, whether it's in the U.S. or whether it's in these countries. It's interesting how most of the migrants go to the welfare states, have the most benefits for the recipients. They treat that as a modern-day jizya. And the jizya was a poll tax when Muhammad, and again, Quran chapter 9, verse 29, was told to fight the unbelievers, or fight the people of the book, which is referring to Jews and Christians, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. So that was a poll tax, and that usually ranged for between 1 to 3 months of your annual income was the poll tax. And that was on top of other taxes that you had to pay as well.
Wow.
So not only did you have to pay that if you say, okay, I don't want to convert to Islam, but I also don't want to fight and end up dying, so I'll go ahead and become a dhimmi. You type in dhimmitude, Dhimmitude, in a search engine, you get 14 centuries of second-class citizenship of Jews and Christians under Islamic rule. And that was the jizya tax, and these Islamists, like this guy, is saying, oh, this is a modern-day jizya. This belongs to Allah. This is our payment from Allah. And that was the one video we wanted to show in there, that we can get the subtitles there. But we were going to go into the government next. Again, these are the 4 areas that you'll get in this presentation.
While you're bringing that up, Tony, I'd just like to acknowledge Pamela Ratcliffe. Jesus is my Savior. Dina Gallagher.
Amen.
Jesus is my Savior, always with me. And I just want to say to all of the Facebook audience and those listening to KGED Talk Radio 1680, it is such a privilege to have you as our family. We consider you family. You are our family that we want to always keep educated, keep informed with what we are learning day to day, but also your receptivity and all your feedback is so much appreciated. Amen. That Pamela and Dina are sharing their heart with us.
Yeah. And that they, as well as any other Christians out there listening, will definitely want to stay tuned for the churches section of
Yes.
this. But yeah, we're moving into government now. I'm not sure exactly what slides you recall in that part of the presentation. Let's see here. There's one slide. Let me just go ahead and show this one. I'm going to skip the video. That's a little bit long. But here, the jihadist groups, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Boko Haram, they have the same Islamic worldview as the Muslim Brotherhood. And there we go. Okay, let's see. I'm going to skip that video. We'll let you see that in the actual presentation online. So, Muslim Brotherhood has the same worldview. And here's a comparison side by side.
This is the slide that impacted me the most when I first heard you a couple of weeks ago or 2 months ago.
Because I have this slide in the Muslim Brotherhood talk.
Yes, and this is the slide that I looked at, and that's when it really hit home when you explained this slide.
Islamists and jihadists hate Israel and the West. They both want the world under Sharia. However, the jihadists are focused on armed struggle, and the Islamists aren't. And, of course, the Islamists are very patient, while the jihadists aren't. So we see here, this is why you have one group or groups carrying guns, another one wearing suits.
And I'd like to interject here. When you mentioned wearing suits today, this is where we are at right now with the many politicians that are saying that we are not encompassing, compassionate enough to immigrants that come to this country that are from different religions and different backgrounds and different cultures. But the same people that are wanting to change the very fabric of what this nation is and how it is represented, they are doing it in the patient fashion. On your slide, it says the Islamist groups, patient. They are very patient. And when the common person like myself, I'm sitting at home, I watch TV and I see the bombings or see the losses of lives from jihadist groups, we think, oh, that could never happen here. That's not going to happen in the United States. We have our armed forces. We have our men and women in uniform. That can't happen here. But then you look at the aspect of Islamist groups, which is and are those that are, some of them are in public office and elected positions, in positions of power, and they are wearing suits. They are not wearing the garb or the uniform of a soldier. But the impact and the threat that they bring is ever so real, and it's the same, if not worse, because it's as if someone's going to come at you armed as a soldier, at least you can defend yourself and come out in a way that you can be forceful. But when someone comes at you with a suit or from a position of power, it's one of those things where it's more of it's a different approach that's being taken, and that's very scary.
If people go to the Vimeo channel, at the top of the page is the Muslim Brotherhood Origin, Identity, and Agenda. When I gave that presentation, I created that originally in 2016. Then I had a 2018 version, and the 2018 versions I gave at the Fresno Republican Women's Group last year. They hit a new record in attendance a second time. They hit a new record the first time I spoke on Sharia, but then another new record when I spoke on this. But then 4 months ago, I created the 2019 edition of the Muslim Brotherhood. That's the one that you saw at that special event. That I got a message like, hey, can you give that talk for this Saturday at this time? And I was like, well, where? What is it? And it was like some kind of undercover, unpublicized event with a congressman. Right. And so yeah, that was cool. I got to meet you as well as women from across the state. There's guys there too. But yeah, so it's great that getting people educated about this. And if you go to the Vimeo channel, you watch the Muslim Brotherhood presentation. That goes deep into the history of that. Talking about from the time of Muhammad up till today, Ottoman Empire falling in 1924, Hassan al-Banna in Egypt in 1928, creating the Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, with the same goal of having the world under Sharia, but having a 100-year plan. Here's the thing. This started in 1928. The Muslim Brotherhood is 91 years old.
Wow.
And look how far they've come.
Right.
And if they have a 100-year goal to take over the world, they got 9 years, left to reach that.
Right.
So, the jihadists are impatient. That's why they're out there fighting. They want a caliphate yesterday.
Right.
The Islamists are okay with a 100-year plan.
Right.
And here's the next slide, and we'll explain who this guy is after this.
The Holy Land Foundation trial was adjudicated in Dallas, Texas in 2008 and identified CARE as a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, or the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood's Palestine Committee, which is Hamas.
Hamas is currently the only Muslim Brotherhood group in the world that forms a government and rules over a large number of people in Gaza. That's Hamas, the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. And CARE is Hamas in America. And it was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation terrorism trial. And yet they've provided training to the FBI, CIA, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and others.
Wow.
And the man who you saw in that video was Chris Gobbets. He actually went undercover and posed as a Muslim. He worked for the Washington branch CARE. And you get this book. You got here, as you can see, 12,000 plus documents, 300 hours of audio and video recordings. And in this big, thick book called Muslim Mafia, Inside the Secret Underworld That's Conspiring to Islamize America, you read his story. And the assertion of the book is that CARE is a Muslim Brotherhood front group. And yet, they're hard at work in America.
Isn't that where the congresswoman the other day said that somebody did something? It was at that CARE conference.
Yes.
The famous statement that Ilhan Omar made, now known nationwide, where on 9/11, some people did something.
Yeah, and she's either ignorant or a liar, because
Both.
she said...
How about both?
Yeah. Or both. Yeah. 2 for 1. She actually said at that conference, CARE was founded after 9/11 because some people did something and were being tired of treated as second-class citizens. Number one, you do a search online, you'll find that CARE was founded in 1994, not after 9/11.
Right.
And she says, oh, we've been treated as second-class citizens for too long. Let's look at her life. She came here as a refugee.
Correct.
And she's now a congresswoman. You can't get any more free than that.
Right.
Yet, you know, if you want to learn about second-class citizenship, like I said, go on a search engine, type in Dhimitude, and you'll learn about second-class citizenship of Christians and Jews who paid the jizya poll tax for the last 1,400 years because they refused to convert to Islam and they didn't feel like fighting and dying. They paid to what some scholars say is just a keep my head on my shoulders for another year tax. That was what that was about.
Right.
In addition to that Muslim Mafia book, this is Philip Haney. He was a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security, a honorably retired U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent, or patrol officer. Here you can see 2 shows that he and I did. You can find those on the Vimeo, and that's the Vimeo channel right there. If you have any problem spelling the odd last name there. So his book is See Something, Say Nothing. A Homeland Security Officer Exposes the Government's Submission to Jihad. And this is his statements here. There's a couple statements. I had watched the DHS, beginning with the George W. Bush administration, move from a law enforcement-based approach to national security to a civil rights-based policy that became known as Countering Violent Extremism, or CVE. Emphasizing engagement and dialogue, CVE focuses on protecting civil rights and civil liberties. The Department of Homeland Security is now focused on protecting civil rights and civil liberties, is what he's saying. Not of American citizens in general, but particularly of Muslims, both citizens and foreigners who in many instances are associated with a threat to the nation's security. And I didn't say this today, but he talks about it in this book. You remember the San Bernardino shooting?
Yes.
The work that Phil was doing, compiling all these files on different people who they deemed as a threat. His work pointed them out before they even made that attack happen.
Wow. That's
After it
amazing.
happened was after he was already pushed back, like, oh no, you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. You're logging too much. This specific jihadist group that you're compiling a whole bunch of info on it. They are not deemed a terrorist organization, so you might be,
overstepping your boundaries.
yeah, overstepping your boundaries,
Sure.
Violating their
Their
rights,
rights, of
because
course.
they're not a designated terrorist organization.
Of course, we're always concerned about violating the rights of others, the rights of a different demographic or of people. When in fact our own American citizens or our own citizens of this country, regardless of what nationality you are, we are less concerned about our veterans, less concerned about our rights, less concerned about citizens that are here being, I would say, domestically attacked with this type of approach from other ethnicities, other nationalities, other religions that were not here and now are here, which we have welcomed them because we are a welcoming country. But they have converted their welcome to, I need to convert this country to be what I want it to be. It's not what I see here. I want to be here, but I don't want it to be the way it is. I want it to be something different. I want it to be something else. And by golly, that's what my agenda is going to be. And I need to become a congresswoman or a congressman or a mayor or a city council person. This is what I'm going to do. And you actually go into that in your slides of how that's going to happen.
The next slide on this one was talking about the June 4th, 2009 A New Beginning speech that Obama gave in Cairo, Egypt. He had the Muslim Brotherhood leader sitting in the front row, and this is where he announced that this new civil rights-based countering violent extremism policy of the DHS, which did away with the initial post-9/11 law enforcement-based counter-terrorism policy. So countering violent extremism, all of a sudden, just gave it a huge generalized, any violent extremism, like as if we've had to deal with Christian violent extremism for 1,400 years or anything else.
Right.
And this speech and this whole announcement of this approach was 6 months after the 108 guilty verdicts were given at the Holy Land Foundation terrorism trial. And Philip goes on to say, from the very beginning, the Obama administration made the deliberate policy decision that it was more appropriate to take into account the civil rights and civil liberties of foreign nationals than to consider the nation's security. So obviously, when you have a new president trying to not only deal with all of the current events, but okay, when and how am I able to even backtrack on past policies? It's like, this guy's work cut out for him. So
Right. On the Facebook audience, Linda says vetting is a must. Chad says they are bad house guests. When we think about how much has changed since 9/11 and what we're talking about here, it seems as though the future can only get better in your eyes, Tony, as far as who comes into this country and their purpose and agenda, or are we on this never-ending spiral where it's just going to continue?
you remember what out of the four different topics that I talked about, you remember what three had in common? the education, the immigration, and the government. Who did I talk about at the very end of each of those segments? About Trump.
Right.
And what is currently happening. As far as the education, if anyone didn't see the slide, again, you'll see it in the full presentation, about all the foreign funding of American university by Islamic nations. He actually, a news story just came out recently that he is now scrutinizing foreign funding of American schools. So I said he needs to do it immediately. And then the immigration, the story came out, I think, 2 days ago. He's talking about ending refugee resettlement next year, bring the number to virtually zero. And I said at the very end, my last statement was, and he needs to do it immediately, kind of thing. And then we got to the government one, which we'll go ahead and we'll get there, I guess. We'll move on to the four shills of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
Some people are calling them the four stooges. Some people are calling them the squad. But this is the most important thing that you need to know, is the four shills of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
And some people say, well, hey, they pointed out this moderate Dem slammed the squad for threatening to primary him. They're Democrats. They're not. They're Democrats. They're socialists. So people say, oh yeah, for socialists. Now, the book, which I actually skipped over, we didn't talk about it, but people are going to see it now. But this is a woman named Sherry Behrens. She wrote a book that's available now.
You talked about her.
It's called An American Woman Living in Egypt, Life During an Islamic Takeover. And when she says they here, she's referring to the Muslim Brotherhood, propagandized a socialized system in which basic things would be given to them for free. Socialism would make people dependent and thus more controllable. Sherry lived in Egypt for decades, and I don't know if you want me to go way back to the summary of her book, but this book just came out. You read this book, it's like you are reading word for word what could happen in America.
Oh my goodness!
You know, she lays it out. I'll kind of just back up here just for the sake of our viewers and listeners who are like, oh, I want that right now. I don't want to wait till this thing's recorded. So this book again, very brand new. Here we go. Sherry Behrens had been conducting field research throughout Egypt and had settled into married life with her Egyptian husband when the Arab Spring began. Quickly recognizing that Western media was concealing the truth, often they do that, Sherry began documenting the events that were taking place. Again, folks, this is the back of the book, and it's not even the whole thing. This is just like a couple paragraphs here. Never-ending violent protests caused chaos to distract the public, while the Muslim Brotherhood censored and arrested members of the media, disabled the Supreme Court, removed judges, and began changing the Constitution. Police were demonized in order to remove them, and once removed, police were replaced with members of Islamist militias. The national anthem and saluting the flag were banned. Egyptian history was removed from textbooks and replaced with Islamic history. Now, how much is demonization of the police going on in America?
Right.
If you have no police because they're being so demonized, they just say, hey, well, I'm just going to quit. What's going to happen to society if you keep demonizing police and they either quit or get fired? Who's going to keep society civil? Are you going to actually trust everyone to obey the laws, even though they know they cannot get arrested?
Right.
Or what happens, the United Nations brings in blue helmets, foreign militias, Muslim, Islamist or not, you have then foreign people patrolling your streets. And so, I mean, it's like, people need to think about, like, what are the other, possibilities here,
Right.
Only an Islamic identity was acceptable to the Muslim Brotherhood. Through personal experiences, Sherry unfolds a fascinating story of a foreign culture and illustrates how Egypt's culture was being systematically removed and replaced with Islam. Though the final process was implemented in a matter of months, the foundation of takeover had been long laid. The Muslim Brotherhood had placed activists inside universities, and the Islamification began by altering the minds of Egypt's youth. I mean, this is a play-for-play what could happen in America. Very interesting book. Get it. Get a case of them. Now, she watched this, and this is what you saw, Lisa. 2019 edition of the Muslim Brotherhood talk.
Right.
She saw this, and this is what she said. She said, this video is excellent and comprehensive in its subject matter, which is difficult to accomplish in less than an hour, but you did it, and you did it well. And of course, I was honored because she's lived there for decades. She wrote a book on it, and she gave me a compliment like that. Now, I said today, too, that shortly after she told me that, some people contacted me, a number of people say, hey, did you see this new documentary on the Muslim Brotherhood? And I was like, well, which one? And it turns out that Ami Horowitz, who's the son of David Horowitz, just came out with a mini 15-minute, mini documentary on the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, mine is, I think, 50 minutes long or so. So it obviously has way more content, way more history. I have historical videos of the founders and all of that stuff. I actually have a multi-angled ultimate solution, which isn't in his. But what he does have is he actually has in-person interviews with Islamists. And this is the clip that I played today. Listen to what this man says.
Nidal Sakir, like most Muslim Brotherhood leaders, attempt, poorly, to sometimes sound moderate. But just keep the camera rolling and it all comes out.
Muslim Brotherhood, I think it might even outlast the United States as we know it, because it seems that the way the United States is going right now.
Or maybe replace it.
Well, look at it right now. I mean, with this Trump thing and the division that you have in America, and people killing each other, and getting on each other's throats, and acting like vulgar and barbaric as we see it right now. Whatever the U.S. is doing to the rest of the world, the U.S. is going to face. It's going to face, definitely. What goes around comes around. There's no question about it. It will definitely come back, and when it comes back, it's going to be ugly. A revolution is coming. It's not going to be green. It's not going to be peaceful like Arab Spring. I guarantee you that. It's going to be bloody. Like from my perspective, because I'm a little bit more quote-unquote radical in my approach, if seeking justice, that makes you radical, or being radical is a good thing.
Is a goal.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Let your radical freak flag fly.
God bless radicalism.
Those pictures that you saw of that rioting stuff, that was the Arab Spring. That is what Sherry documents in her book.
Wow.
You scroll through a section of the book. I mean, it's like a day-by-day diary that she was keeping of what was happening there.
Wow.
And that's exactly what she was talking about. That's what he's talking about. While we're here, we can just go through the 5 phases.
Yes.
And as I did it in person today, I said, hey, raise your hand if you think this is the phase that America is in.
Yes.
Now, people on Facebook, I don't know if they want to put, like or, whatever they want to do. They'll say, oh, yeah, okay, let's participate. Live audience interaction here. The Muslim Brotherhood's plan is a 5-phase plan. So, however, people on Facebook, wherever you're watching, however you think that you need to interact to let us know that this is what you think. This is where you think we are. Phase 1, establishment of an elite Muslim leadership while raising taqwa, or Islamic consciousness, in the Muslim community. A number of people raised their hand on that one.
Right.
Phase 2, creation of Islamic institutions the leadership can control, along with the formation of autonomous Muslim enclaves. People are raising their hand with that one too. I don't know if some people are just keeping their hand up.
No.
Or
No, I saw them raise their hands individually.
Now, phase 3. Infiltration and Islamization of America's political, social, economic, and educational systems, forming a shadow state within the state, escalation of religious conversions to Islam, and manipulation of mass media and sanitization of language offensive to Islam. A ton of hands went up.
That's when I raised mine.
And I say, okay, good job. That's where we are. What do we have to look forward to? Phase 4. Openly hostile public confrontation over U.S. policies, including rioting and militant demands for special rights and accommodations for Muslims. Now, some people raise their hands and say, oh, we're there too. I don't think so. I think this is talking like, all out here. But then we see phase 5, final conflict and overthrow, jihad. And that is where I then moved to the 4 areas right there. That's where we started, and you and I went through the education stuff a bit, immigration, government. Let's see if there's anything else we should cover in here. So the people who are listening today, they're getting it almost as if it were live.
Yes.
Because again, this is not recorded and on the channel yet. It will be. So you guys are privileged to get all this info that hasn't been recorded. Okay, so anyway, back to socialism here. I already read this one. I believe socialism would make people dependent and thus more controllable. So the Muslim Brotherhood uses socialism. The U.S. Brotherhood, I say U.S. Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, excuse me. Yeah, kind of the same. The Muslim Brotherhood doesn't like nationalism.
Correct.
That is a form of shirk, or putting something above a law, man-made law above Sharia or Islamic law. Now, Vladimir Lenin is the one who said the goal of socialism is communism. And another book I recommended was The Red-Green Axis 2.0, an existential threat to America and the world. This book informs you about a collusion between the Democratic Party, American communists, socialists, and other brands of progressives, quote-unquote, i.e. the red, as you can see there, and the forces of the Islamic Jihad, the green. And I told people, get the book. People say, hey, what do these have in common? 135 pages, you'll learn. And then I said, yeah, leftists and Islamists face a lot of the same struggles. And I got some laughs out of people when they saw that. And then we got into how more Muslims are running for office today than ever before. This was actually the last year. This is this year, running for 2019, 2020, just some of them. A lot more than this.
Oh.
And then we got into the whole, I'm wondering if those were handed out today. They had a bunch of copies.
Yes.
Were they handed out?
I saw the list of the people that are electeds already.
Over 100 U.S. congressional lawmakers who support CARE.
Correct.
28 of them
are in California.
Right. So those were passed out?
Yes, I saw.
Okay,
I have one.
I was going to say, if not, there's like a stack sitting somewhere because we forgot about that. 16 likely Democratic presidential candidates endorse CARE.
Wow. Let's
see here. Who are they? Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Amy Klobuchar, Sherrod Brown, Eric Holder, former Attorney General, Tom Steiner, Eric Swalwell. I think he's pretty much out now.
Yes.
People couldn't take his...
Thank goodness he's out.
The gun ban and shoot you with missiles or something like that if you don't give them up or whatever he said. John Delaney, Tim Ryan, Bob Casey, Martin O'Malley, Pete, but something.
Buttigieg.
Yeah, him. Michael Bennett, Chris Murphy, and Seth Malton. So anyway, they all support CARE, which has been labeled a terrorist organization by the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. And like the other two sections at the very end, talking about Trump, let's hope that Trump designates the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group sooner rather than later, because he needs to do it immediately. And that took us to number 4, the churches.
Yes, where is the slide? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this just came into my mind, and if I don't say it, I will forget. Don't you hate it when you have something on the tip of your tongue, and if you don't say it, someone says something, and then boom, it's gone?
Now the Christians are really listening.
I want to know, where is the clip of the lady that came out as a...
Oh, that's at the end. That's when I was talking about being bold.
Oh, okay. I can't wait to put that one on for everyone to see.
Can you skip, or you want to skip?
No.
Okay.
The churches is critical. It's important.
Yeah. So look at what's again. This is another section where I point to other countries, so you can see what is happening over there. Learn from their mistakes. In the UK, church allowed to remove pews to allow Muslim events. Crosses in Italian cemetery covered to avoid offense to other religions.
Wow.
And in the UK again, Durham Church criticized for offering to cover crosses and host Muslim prayers. I then got into the interfaith dialogues, which I'm not seeing as much, but they're still happening here and there. These are usually put on and organized by Muslims, either imams from mosques or Islamic centers. And they'll say, "Oh, come look, Muslims, Jews, and Christians together. Like, look how much we have in common," kind of thing. And you study who they are. It's more like, okay, we have a Muslim, yeah, and then we have like a liberal Jew, and then like a pastor of a Unitarian Universalist church. And all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, we look how much we have in common. So then I talked about this show that we did called "The Deception of Interfaith Dialogues." It was myself, Dr. Jay Smith. People may recognize him because he has been debating Muslim fundamentalists in the UK for years. He's no longer there now, but he's looked up to as someone who's open air preaching, debating all the time, scholar, and has a PhD in Islamic studies. Joe Carey, next to him, he was actually the founder of Radical Truth.
Oh, wow.
He is my friend who died last year, and that was the reason why I moved into the ministry. And then we have the host of the show there. And then we get into the common word. You can actually go to radicaltruth.net and go to articles, go to the bottom, you'll see common word. You'll be able to learn about that there. I'm going to go ahead and go past these slides. Okay, who is Jesus according to Islam? If a Muslim says, "Hey, I love Jesus. We believe in Jesus." And this is like a way of saying, "Hey, we have stuff in common.
With you.
We're like you." That kind of thing. Look how much we have in common. We love Jesus too. Because I'm Muslim. I love Jesus because I'm Muslim. But if we look to the sources to see who Jesus is, according to Islam, you need to know that Jesus is a Muslim. Just like Adam was a Muslim. Just like Cain and Abel and Abraham and Moses.
Everybody's a
Muslim. Everybody's a Muslim. Jesus, or quote-unquote Jesus, he isn't the Jesus of the New Testament. He's the Isa of the Quran. Isa. That's what he's known as. He's not God's son. Now, sometimes say, "Oh yeah, he is," but that's just a title. Just
I
like
about lost it, Tony, when you put the slide up. I sat there and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to say this.
Yeah, no problem.
I sat there and this is where I felt like my blood was boiling, and I just had to contain myself, sit there, and my head started getting hot. I was so upset.
Just because of the picture?
No, because of what you were saying. And then the next slide, I know exactly what it says. And that's where I just had to compose myself, sit there, be nice and quiet. But it really gets to the heart and soul of who I am as a Christian.
And that's the thing. If Christianity is true, Islam's automatically false.
Correct.
It's like, same thing when it comes to, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. These different man-made religions and theological cults. It's like, it's like, even, you take the Bible out of the equation. There are so many similarities between Islam and Mormonism that many scholars consider Islam medieval Mormonism.
Oh, wow.
Now, this turned into a huge... if you scroll down on the Radical Truth Facebook page, you go all the way down to this video where it's basically a Mormon attorney who just got hired by CARE.
No way.
And the comment by Radical Truth was something like, only a matter of time until she puts on a hijab.
And she did.
And no, she didn't. But, the Mormons came out and were like, well, excuse me? Like, then that's the thing about the whole medieval Mormonism, which Joe knew about. And, that's like, there's so many similarities between Muhammad and Joseph Smith. Now, let me say, they are not the same. I'm not saying Islam is Mormonism or vice versa.
No.
The thing is that there's so many similarities between Islam, Muhammad and Joseph Smith. We actually did a show with like 25 similarities on there.
Oh, wow.
And then between the Hajj and the Mormon temple, again, they're not the same. And at the same time, Islam says there's only one God. Mormonism says you can become a god. So it's like major difference there.
Right.
Other than that, there's a whole lot of similarities. Anyway, getting back to this one, that's just a little teaser of that stuff. But
sorry, I didn't mean to take you off topic.
No problem. So Isa is a Muslim. He's a prophet. And he did not die on a cross. If he didn't die on a cross, obviously he didn't rise from the dead either. Is it feeding through? Can people see there you go.
There you go.
He didn't die on a cross. Now, he is coming back, but he's coming back to destroy Christianity.
You see why I was losing it when I was sitting there? I sat down and I felt my head was getting hot, my blood was boiling, and I said, okay, Lisa, just relax. But it was this slide, and I could just... Yeah.
So, okay, and here's the next part. And this is why they'll say, it's not like they know that the Islamic view of Jesus is completely contradictory to the truth of the Christian view, which is that because some Muslims have, they know Christianity, they know the concept of the Trinity, even though they deny it. But it's not like many Muslims who actually say, yes, I am a devout Muslim, know the Christian Jesus is the true one, but I'm just going to believe Isa anyways. Like they believe Isa is the true Jesus. Now, according to Islam, the gospel, known as the Injil, was actually a book given to Jesus. Where in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are about Jesus.
Exactly.
No, in Islam, it was a book. Just like the Quran was sent down to Muhammad.
Oh.
And the Torah and the Zabur were sent down before the Injil. That's the thing. It was a book given to him.
Yeah, no.
Now, if you combine that with the official Islamic teaching that Jesus prophesied the coming of Muhammad, then by accepting the Islamic Jesus and his gospel, quote unquote, you're pretty much accepting Muhammad in the Quran. So Muslims have a false understanding of God, and they do not understand Trinitarian monotheism and the incarnation. And that's when we got into the Trinity.
Right. I saw that. What's after that?
Was that helpful?
Yes.
It was helpful.
It was helpful, but I have to admit it was a little deep. It was a little complex.
Now because I was at a political meeting, I didn't get as theological on it. So I'll get more theological now. Okay. So when someone asks you, okay, explain the Trinity, how do you explain that? I mean, what illustrations have you heard?
To explain the Trinity,
Yeah.
it's God, Father, the Holy Spirit.
Okay, but I mean, like what in the world? I mean, what's an example? You ever hear about like the egg? You don't have anything with that? Eggshell, egg yolk, egg white, but it's only one egg.
Oh no, that's
Right?
Cute. We can use that for
It's
Easter.
cute, but it's like it's okay. Here's the thing: eggshell, egg yolk, egg white, but they're parts. So you're basically saying, well, God's composed of parts, and therefore God's dependent upon parts to be who He is. So if God lost any of those things, He would no longer be God. So there's a problem there.
Right, that's not true.
Now, there's another one. People probably heard this one: the ice, the water, the gas.
Oh, okay.
Right? Now, that's a good illustration, but not for the Trinity. It's a good illustration of an ancient heresy known as modalism.
Oh.
And that is where there's one God who was at one time the Father, and then He became the Son, and then He became the Holy Spirit. But there's only one person,
right? Not
three distinct, eternal, coexisting persons. So, actually, modalism, that was dealt with, in the church councils that we heard about, way back in the day. That's what those church councils were for. The 7 ecumenical councils were to clear up the heretical teachings that were spreading.
Oh, wow.
So every church council dealt with a heresy, like the Council of Nicaea. That was with Arius, not Arian, like Arian Brotherhood, but Arius as far as Arianism, that Jesus was a created being. In a recycled version of Arianism is what Jehovah's Witnesses believe today.
Oh, I see.
So the falsity of the Watchtower has already been dealt with, in 325, just a recycled version. So anyway, that's what the church councils were for, was to clear up heretical teachings. Getting back to the Trinity. So anyway, the ice, the water, the gas, that's a good illustration for modalism, or oneness Pentecostalism.
I see.
Is what some people call themselves, or oneness Pentecostals, apostolic. That would fall underneath that as well. Okay, so so nothing in this world actually is a good illustration of God or the Trinity. Why? Because everything in this world is physical. It's in time. It's changing, and so on. So if God created the universe in the space-time continuum, He created time itself, well, it's illogical to say, well, what happened before time began? There is no before time. You're either in time or you're outside of time. So anything that we point to, okay, this is a good illustration of God. Why? It's physical. It's in time. It can't be. It's physical, and so on. So the best thing to use is an abstract object, something that exists but not physically, like a number. Like if I say, okay, bring me a bucket of 9s.
Right.
Is it actually the metaphysical abstract object of 9? Or you can bring me a bucket of like maybe pieces of wood shaped like 9s, or pieces of plastic.
But not 9.
Right, not 9 itself. It's an abstract object. A shape, a triangle. It's like you can't bring me triangle-ness. You can bring me plastic or whatever in the shape of a triangle, right? So, a triangle is an abstract object, something that exists in this world, but only abstractly, not physically. And 2, it's a good illustration of unity and plurality. Because you only have one triangle there, but you have 3 sides, 3 corners. You take any side or corner away, it's no longer a triangle.
Correct.
Right? So, we say there's one God. And God is not a personal name. It's a nature. And I think this clears it up for a lot of people. And I said, Lisa, you and I, if someone asks us, who are you? You're going to say Lisa, I'm going to say Tony. If they say Lisa and Tony, what are you? Are we going to say Lisa and Tony? Or what are we going to say?
We're human.
We're human, right?
I knew that answer from earlier.
So we have the same whatness, but a different who-ness,
yes.
Right? So a what is a nature. We're human. So God is the nature. It's a what? A divine nature. Now if we ask, who is God or who is divine, we have the Father, we have the Son / Word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God.
Yes.
And we have the Holy Spirit. So we have who 1, who 2, and who 3. But who 1's not who 2, who 2's not who 1, who 1's not who 3, who 3's not who 1, who 2's not who 3, and who 3's not who 2. But they're all what?
Who's
God. Right? So people start saying, oh, who's on first? You know? That's why I always bring a picture of who on first with me
I saw that.
when I talk about this. So, yeah, God is one what? God is a what in general? Who is divine? The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So, if we ask, what is the Father? Divine. What is the Son? Divine. So again, the nature. What is the Holy Spirit? Divine. Now, the second who's what? God, divine, took on a second what? A human nature, just like you and I have.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins.
Amen.
Now, I didn't say this earlier, but I usually say, so God, remember this. God is one what and three who's. Jesus is one who and two what's.
Oh, jeez. So easy to
remember.
remember.
That, okay? Now, this is actually a reasonable explanation for the Trinity.
Yes.
One being, one essence, one divine nature, but who has that nature? Three persons. Now, Muslims will say, oh, why is it three? Why can't there be four? It could be, but guess what? How many persons, distinct persons, do we find in the Bible who are divine? Three. It could be more, because divinity is like, God is
infinite,
immaterial, infinite. I mean, it could be four, it could be five. I mean, how can you put a limit on how many people are divine, right?
God has no limit.
But the Bible says there are three persons. Now, finite human nature, you can have a potentially infinite amount. That's why you have tons of humans.
Right.
It's a finite nature. Now, you can there's no such thing as an actual infinite. An actual infinite has no beginning and no end. You can have a potential infinite, and that's because the only actual infinite is God himself, because there's no beginning and no end. That's an actual infinite. In this world, you have a potential infinite. Means starting at one, you can keep counting forever. You can always add another one.
Right.
So it's called potential. This is philosophical theology stuff here. But anyway, Trinity. So anyway, that's a good illustration, and that actually makes sense to people. It's way better illustration than the egg yolk, the egg white, and the heretical modalistic ice, water, and gas. A cool one. I mean, a couple that I hear about that are more metaphysical, at least. I mean, talk about the sun, light, heat, and what else?
Air?
Sun. I can't remember the third ones. Light, heat, and something else. Anyway, one sun, and anyway, but it's still a physical object, right? So anyway, that's why an abstract object is the best, and that's how we got it. That's how we got into the gospel today. We got to 1 Corinthians 15, sharing how Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures, that he appeared to Peter and his 12 disciples, and he appeared to more than 500 people at one time. Talked about how archaeological evidence sets Christianity apart from all the man-made religions out there.
Yes.
And I told people, and this was getting towards the end of this churches section of this talk. So any non-Christians who were there, they got the gospel.
Right.
I said the truth of Christianity is powerful, and Islam is the greatest lie in the world. God is more powerful than gun-carrying jihadists and suit-wearing Islamists. The biggest problem in the world is not radical Islam, it's nominal Christianity. Christians are called to proclaim the gospel and defend the historic Christian faith. And we have apologetics to defend the Christian faith. We also have polemics to critique and refute the Islamic faith, as well as every other man-made religion out there. Then this one always gets a laugh, but I tie in God's sovereignty here. But it's kind of cool though, because people see this, and people out there all taking their pictures.
I saw that.
I put it up, and the laugh starts. I kind of wait, a few seconds, but then they get hit hard with a biblical truth here. And the reason I love that, actually, the guy who drew this actually is a critic of Trump. You may hate him. I don't know. Anyway, he's a critic. But like, hey, that's a perfect illustration for him to say here. And I say, in the book of Romans, in the New Testament, Paul tells us that there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God.
Amen.
This should remind us that God is sovereign, so no matter what happens in this world, nothing is outside of God's infinite knowledge and power. This means that when the things happen, whether we like them or not, there's only two possibilities. Either God caused it to happen, or he allowed it to happen.
Right.
So when Obama was in office for 8 years, God allowed it, or he caused it. If Trump's in office for 8 years, it's because God allows it or causes it. In the Old Testament book of Daniel, which was written in the 6th century BC, he told us that God removes kings and sets up kings.
Yes.
And today we need to keep the same thing in mind when it comes to our presidents and leaders. Even if you don't, I mean, John, Ilhan Omar here, Rashida Tlaib, so many people don't like him. But ultimately, God is in control.
True.
That means that God's allowing them to be where they are, or he's causing them to be where they are. So this is something to keep in the back of your mind. You know, think about God's sovereignty here.
Is the video of that lady coming?
Yes.
Okay.
It's on its way. So, okay, here, this what people need to realize too. He gives good authorities as a blessing.
Yes.
And sometimes he institutes evil rulers as a means of trial or judgment.
Oh, wow.
Now, people are going to have their opinion on if he's blessing or
not
instituting an evil ruler for trial and judgment. The most important thing to keep in mind is that God rules over all earthly authorities. And I said, now in case we have any atheist agnostics or skeptics here, keep in mind what atheist Richard Dawkins has now finally come to admit. I have mixed feelings about the decline of Christianity, insofar as Christianity might be a bulwark against something worse.
Right.
And then I said, I think Richard Dawkins has come to realize this truth, and the Christians are going to say amen to that. Islamism and you is only separated by Christianity and the truth of Christianity.
I saw that slide. I thought it was very impressive. It sums it all up. It brings it all in one slide.
So then, I said, so what should you be doing about all this? And I said, first, since a number of people seem to forget where the free speech zones are, I brought this highly detailed map with me.
Yes.
People started laughing at that one. And I said,
it was great.
When you no longer have the right to offend people, you no longer have freedom of speech and expression. And if you're, no one ever complains when you say something that they like or that they agree with. So the First Amendment is specifically in reference to speech people don't like, offensive speech, which is the only type of speech that needs to be protected and defended. 2, do not think that America is immune to Islamization. Do not dismiss the warnings I gave you today. And again, this is a, like you said, maybe Paul Revere message to what could be. But hopefully it doesn't.
Right.
And now, number 3, be bold.
Yes.
And this was your favorite video
yes.
of all.
It made me stand up in the room.
I
don't know if you saw me.
I was thinking, when I put this in here, I was like, okay, either people are going to be offended.
Oh, no.
Or they're going to love it. And guess what? This was put on the Radical Truth Facebook page a while back.
Uh-huh.
This thing went viral.
Nice.
I mean, it was crazy how many people were sharing it, liking it. Oh, she's my new hero. All these other comments that were on there.
Facebook audience, watch this and please give us your feedback on this, what he's going to show right now.
All right, here we go. I said, be bold.
I proclaim the name of the Lord Jesus Christ over the capital of Texas. I stand against Islam and the false prophet Muhammad. Islam will never dominate the United States, and by the grace of God, it will not dominate Texas.
I like that.
Were you one of the people cheering?
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I stood up after you put that video up. I stood up and I said, "Yes."
There I was. I mean, I had to take a little pause because so many people were cheering on
Yes,
that.
that was
Okay.
me. I started that.
Guess it's good that I had it in there.
Stood up and I was clapping.
And then I said, okay, so that's Texas bold. Maybe you don't want to be there in California. But then I said, okay, but be this bold. And that's where we talked about the whole Minnesota City Council unanimously deciding to stop the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't know how many people realize this is Ilhan Omar's district of all districts. But guess what? People showed up. They made a fuss about it.
Yes.
President Trump tweeted about it.
Yes.
People carried flags. They started saying the Pledge of Allegiance over and over and over again. And the city council reversed their decision. Now, I think they said, oh, we're going to do it twice per month. I think it's still not every meeting, perhaps. But it was reversed, to whatever degree. And it just shows, I mean, what would have happened if no one said anything?
Right.
It would have stayed.
Right.
So to answer someone's question earlier, okay, what can the average person do? Number one, get educated. Number two, stand up for what you know is right because it's what our country was founded upon. And after this, because I know so many people, again, and that's the thing, you go to radicaltruth.net, you know that we are Christians, that we have a love for Muslims just because not because they're Muslims, but because they're people made in the image of God. Right. They just happen to be the one man-made religious group we focus on. So you know that we actually care for Muslims.
Yes.
And yes, we do give some dry humor and we give commentary you don't get anywhere else. And people do laugh at different things here and there, but we love Muslims as people made in the image of God, and we are not going to demonize Muslims themselves. Muslims are people. Islam's a religio-political system. We definitely make the distinction there. But I know, and that's the thing, you will see a lot of non-Christians on Radical Truth. You will see the comments from people. Usually any ones about death threat end up getting deleted. They're not death threats to us, but people that they don't like. It's like a lot of non-Christians come to Radical Truth. They just want to get the news. Amazingly, after that whole similarity between Muhammad and Joseph Smith, after that big old, we had a number of Mormons come in and get mad and a back and forth debate. All of a sudden, we had a ton of people saying, oh, these Radical Truth people are standing up for what they believe. They know what they believe. They know why they believe it. And we even have a number of Mormon they're still there.
Nice.
Even though they might have had some negative comments, they know, they know that we, we're genuine people. We love people. But again, that's the healthy middle. It's about the gospel, but it's also about exposing Islam for the lie that it is. And because I know that so many people just hate Ilhan and everything, I pointed people to this show that I did with Sister Mariama. She's from Somalia. So she's basically an elder to Ilhan Omar. Former Muslim, now Christian. And in this show, which you can find on my Vimeo channel, she gives her message to Ilhan Omar.
Oh, wow.
As a woman who is also from Somalia, also in America, and does not wear the hijab. And even Mariama will tell you, if Ilhan was in Somalia and she took off her hijab, she'd be raped.
Wow.
So here you have all the freedom in the world to take it off. But she personally chooses to be Sharia compliant. And what does that tell you?
That her heart is not where she's representing the majority of those that are the soul.
Why isn't
of
she
this
saying, well,
country.
I have freedom, I'm progressive, and since I'm progressive, I'm taking off the hijab?
Well, no, because...
It's part of the agenda, the Islamization.
Right.
Where does she give herself leeway? It's when she's dancing in the streets with transvestites and LGBTQ. There's pictures online about that. Dancing at the LGBTQ parade.
Oh, wow.
And she's Sharia compliant enough to wear a hijab, which she knows Sharia. She knows that in Islamic countries, all the time, you have Muslims taking homosexuals
Correct.
up to the roof and throwing them off.
Right.
Here in the West is where you have LGBTQ who don't study Islam, holding up signs that we're against Islamophobia.
Right.
Not knowing what happens to them in Islamic countries.
Correct.
But people say, we have this on Radical Truth a lot too, just ban Islam. They demonize Islam. They demonize Muslims. Every single Muslim is practicing taqiyya, no matter what they say. If they open their mouth, it's taqiyya. It's like totally overused term. I said, no. the law that bans Islam today can ban Christianity tomorrow.
Right.
And the religious aspects of Islam are protected by the Constitution, just like every other man-made religion. So let people practice their man-made religion. If Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower, had some type of political practice of the Watchtower that infringed upon the rights of other Americans, then it would be time to say, hey, no, can't do that.
Right.
That's infringing upon other people's rights.
That's the line, Tony, that is being crossed continuously with the agenda that the Ilhan Omars of the world and the Rashida Tlaibs of the world are doing. They're crossing that line. They're no longer on one side. They're crossing the side. They want to move the line. They want to take out the line, period.
Oh.
And I have to admit, myself and others, someone walked up to me and said, Lisa, did you feel like you needed to cry or you wanted to cry? I felt like I needed to cry. They said,
which slide?
Right at the end of your presentation.
Oh, okay, I think I know why.
A lot of people came up to me and said, "Man, I was just gonna start bawling," and I said I had to swallow hard. It was your ending to all of your information today that you gave to us. Your presentation was just so impactful.
Should we go to that, or should we make people wait?
No, I think we should go to it.
Okay. So, at this point, it was near the end of the presentation. I said, okay, so remember.
Our job is to change the Constitution of America.
And then I grabbed the Constitution.
Yes.
Which I don't know if I have my... Oh, I do. Look at that. Okay. I can give the same illustration if people can see me on...
Are you going to do the illustration with the Bible and the Constitution?
Yeah.
Oh, that was so awesome.
I thought that would be a good visual.
It was great. It was very impactful. It was perfect.
I thought that would be the best thing to do before I tried to make people cry, which obviously was successful.
It worked.
So.
It worked.
I said,
it's very impactful. I'm so happy that the Facebook audience can see this.
So I said, what is this paper? Okay. So when this came up, so I'll use this for my little backgroundy right here. I said, okay. I said, what did I say? I'm trying to think now. I said...
You said that the foundation... That there is a foundation that...
Oh, I said, so this is the Constitution. And I said, whether people like it or not, believe it or not, etc. This book, people can see there, Constitution of the United States, is founded upon the Bible.
Yes.
This is the foundation of this document. But what are people doing? Not just Islamists, progressives, leftists, everybody. Attacking God. Attacking the Ten Commandments. Let's take God out of the classroom. Let's take God, or prayer out of school. That's, 1960s, they took that stuff out. Let's remove God from everywhere. Have you seen the video of, I don't know where, not Congress, somewhere, where I was going to play this. There's some things I could have put in this presentation I didn't, and I'm glad, because I already went over like 10 minutes of my time. Thankfully, everybody was okay with that. But there's a video I had of some people going before, I think, Congress or something, and then the liberal bald guy with the glasses, that probably isn't narrowed down much, he was basically saying they do their oath, and then one of the guys says, can we do that? I said, can we do that over? He's like, why? He's like, because we left out, so help me God.
Oh, wow.
Have you seen that video?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's I'm sure they pull up on YouTube. Oh. So this conservative guy's like, yeah, he's like, well, we've been doing it for 200 and something years. Like, there's no reason to stop now. Like, can we do it again? I mean, do the whatever he said, mind doing it? And the guy's like, well, no, we don't want to push it upon anybody. It's your it's your choice. And he's like, well, can we see hands? Who wants to do it? And this other guy was like, we don't have any religious tests. It's not required or anything like that. I mean,
wow.
They want to remove it. Tradition. They can say, oh, it's a tradition. Tradition. Let's keep it. Or even more so, it's what we're founded upon.
Right.
So I said, this is the founding of this. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, this is what this document is based upon. Now, as people want to remove God, remove Jesus, remove everything from this. they are essentially removing the foundation of this document.
Right.
And that's what happened in Europe. That is secularization. And that leaves a vacuum for something else. And I can tell you exactly what it'll be, because it's the one religio-political system compared to all just the man-made religions only. I said that will become the new foundation of that document. And if this becomes the foundation of this document, then this document will change. So, I talked about keeping this as the foundation, never forgetting that, and I said something else. It was kind of like a ad-libbing thing. And then I went on to my last few slides. I said, and Ronald Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to our children to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. Is that why they started crying? Or my next...
Everybody wanted to cry after the next part.
Okay, because this is what I added in here. So, okay, one day we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. And then this is what I added in today at the last... Okay, I finished creating this presentation this morning.
Oh.
Okay. I've never given this presentation before. I was just, I'm trying to keep my time. Anyway, it's just something I was like, okay, let me add this in. And what I said today, after I said, the United States where men were free by Ronald Reagan, I added in my own comment. And if that day ever comes, this is the American story we will tell them. I said, God bless you and God bless America. It was like,
and then we all stood up.
Like roaring crowd.
And it was a standing ovation. The Facebook audience is sending hearts and likes and thumbs up and happy faces, and some are having tears. This presentation was so impactful that many of us walked away choked, if you will. A lot of people just felt that it got to the soul of who we are, why we are American, why we are patriots, why we care so much for this country. And as I look at the flag right here behind you with our red and our blue and our white, and how proud we are of who we are as a nation, why we are as we are who we are because everyone is wanting to be just like us, and they're not. But once they arrive here, they want us to be like them, and we won't. And we'll have to end it there, but I think that everyone that has shared this evening with us, with Tony Gurley, has taken something home with them that makes us more of a family. We've bonded more closely, and this will be one of those times when we just look back and say, yeah, that's what we did this day.
Amen. And if you guys liked this, again, it's not on the Vimeo channel yet, but it will be hopefully in the next week or less. So feel free to go there, subscribe. You'll get an automatic notification in your email when it's available. And then at that point, you can get it. You can add it to your social media. You can email the link to people. And it's there. Just like the Muslim Brotherhood, the Sharia, and other ones are there now to share and watch as much as you like. This one will be there soon, too. Lights out when Islam rules America.
Thank you, Tony Gurley.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you.